comfortable. You try to pin yourself to one location. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, I've talked about most of the sighting stuff that I've seen that I really want to talk about. I've seen a few more things, but not overly excited. I've seen some right-angle turns at night over the desert, and I've seen streaks of light in the sky and blah blah. I've seen stars that are not stars, and I know they're looking at me, and I go stare at them for a while, and they just slowly fade out. Things like that. But now I want to talk about things that are associated with the UFO phenomena in general that I can see now in hindsight that I didn't see as it was happening. Things aren't as they appear. Quite often things that you think are just coincidence or accidents are not at all. They're actually long-range plans. For instance, I've had a phenomenon happen to me. I'm not even sure how long during my life, but eventually I became aware of it and realized that there was something strange. For instance, I have a fairly good memory, so when I go and I read stuff, and I mostly read just technical stuff, and I see an article or a topic or book thing, and I go read it. And I note things and where they're at in books, and if they're of interest to me like everybody else does. And then what will happen is that, say, a month later, a year later, 10 years later or something, I'll be working a problem, and I need that information that I remember reading so-and-so and such. I say, oh yeah, I know where that's at. I don't have to do that work myself. I read that, and the guy's already done the work. So I go get the thing, and to my surprise, I can't find it. I go, well, wait, no, I got a good memory. I read that. I remember blah, 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 blah. And then I finally realized that, remember I told you earlier about how they got rid of the road for me and the cattle guard? And I found that very disturbing because they altered my reality, and it's very unsettling. Don't screw with my reality, please. Well, what I realized is that they had the ability and have been using it all during my life to feed me information, technical information. But it wasn't really there. I mean, it was there for me, but it wasn't really there in the publication. I'll give you an example. Back at, I think it was about 1961, Scientific American had a very interesting article, for me anyway, on peculiar galaxies that you could look at through the telescope, and they looked like they had their cores blown out. Oh, what the hell happened to that poor galaxy? It's not a nice dome anymore. It's all, over the place. You're going, whoa, something really bad happened there. Well, there was an astronomer named Halton Arp who went out studying galaxies, peculiar galaxies, and he got quite a catalog of them going. And he noticed quite a few observations and correlations with these peculiar galaxies. These things called quasars would quite often sandwich these galaxies. And so he came up with a theory. And he got himself in a lot of trouble. They forced him out of Caltech eventually because of his heretical ideas. Luckily for him, there was a very world-class university in Germany called University of Heidelberg that recognized a very bright guy and said, oh, come on over here, Halton. Forget Caltech. Just come over here and work with us. We can take it. And so he went there. Well, I read this article in this, I think it was a 1961 issue of Scientific American, back when they were really scientific. They had good equation stuff and lots of good diagram, real things competently, technically done. And it talked about these bizarre stars in the cores of galaxies that were unstable, supermassive stars, like 1 billion solar masses or more, that would detonate. And I thought that was a fascinating article. And then, I set it aside and went on about my business. Well, about 10 years later, I'm going, And I went back looking for that article, and I found the article, and all the stuff in the article was still there except for the part about the supermassive stars in the galactic core was missing. I'm thinking, there's no way that wasn't there the first time. And I realized it wasn't there, but it was there for me. And then I had other experiences. For instance, I think it was Nature's magazine back around 1972 had an article on what do they call them? Rotating neutron stars called pulsars. They put out this periodically radio transmission pulse because the star is rotating at very high speed and has a really strong magnetic field, and that becomes a radio wave at distance, and you can use it for a clock, essentially. So I was reading this very technical article on pulsars. And it was really a great article. And the most fascinating thing was it got to the part in the article, it had all these field equations, really, complex matrix, density, and I was reading it, and I got the gist of it, and I saw what they were showing in the calculations was that when you reached a certain distance from one of these objects, that the thing called the multiple field of the object collapsed into what we would call a gravity field. Not a strong one, but it was there. In other words, let's say you had something like a rotating dice. Each corner of a dice, you had a positive, negative, positive, negative. And on the bottom side of the dice, it was the same again, but just the opposite on the top. You put an axis through it, and the thing's called an octopole because there's 8 of them. Pos, neg, pos, neg, pos, neg, okay. You spin it about its axis. Well, that field rotates with the thing. And if it's real close to the thing where you're taking the field, it rotates at such and such a speed. If you go, let's say, 10 times out, it has to rotate at much higher speed to keep up with the object, the field that's generated by these guys. Well, there reaches a point where if the field tries to keep up with the object, it has to reach the speed of light. But we're not allowed to go past the speed of light in most situations. So at that point is where the field collapses from a regular, what we call octopole field, to what we'd call a gravity field. I went, wow, that's one hell of an insight and revelation, and had all the equations and the whole thing full blown. Okay, so I read the article and went on about my business. Well, lo and behold, I guess it was about a year, 2, 3 years later, I decided, hey, it'd be nice to figure out how to make gravity efficiently and use it. Oh, I know how to do that. That article had the equations. All I got to do is scale it down to our world, forget the galactic, the dimension scale rotation, and figure out how to do it in a compact fashion. I've got gravity. So I went back. I said, well, they've already done the work for me. So I went back, grabbed the article, and guess what? That section's missing. So I had more and more experiences like that. And as far as I know, they only show me once, and I better get it the first time. It's not going to be there when I come back looking for it. And I never know. It's frustrating. I never know if it's real or not real when I'm reading it. You see what I'm saying? How do you trust your reality? I mean, it's real to you at the time. You taste it, smell it, and you touch it. It's real. By George, it turned out the whole thing was what are you going to do? Okay, I've had that type of experiences, and I'm not the only one, I believe. I think there's a lot of people that have these experiences, and some haven't even tripped on it yet. It took me years and years before I stumbled on it. Finally, said, "My God, what is this?" Now, I'll tell you another bizarre thing that I think is associated with them. Back in about 1960, I think it was in 66. I'm studying physics and mathematics, and I'm really into it because I just like that stuff. And one day I get one of those things called, what do they call it, a cathartic experience. I suddenly, this thing comes to my mind, and I see it. I don't understand why I'm seeing it, but I got this image. I see it. I see the light. I see it. And what I saw is a connection between gravity and electromagnetic field. And I saw that there was a simple equation that related charge in a new way to mass, a mass-charge relationship. I saw the mathematics of it. It all just crystallized it in like a vision. But I didn't know how to derive it. I plugged it in and it worked. I thought that was, wonderful, but I just pulled it out of whole cloth. So I was frustrated. Got this wonderful, great thing that couples gravity and electromagnetic fields together, but so what? It's not a really good theory because I invented this, and who can I convince about this equation I pulled out of the air, They'll say, oh, that's very interesting, Mr. Wade, but, and that's that. So, okay, now we go forward a few years. I'm now at Cal State LA, and, when you take a major, they say, you will take these courses, you'll take these courses, and you'll have this many electives. They have a program. And so it's that time of the year again, this quarter system. You go down and you fill out for the next set of courses you're going to jump through. So I'm trying to make up my mind, and I got all these mathematical electives I have to decide on. So I'm looking through the math, section. I'm thinking, oh, here's one. I wonder what linear algebra is. Yeah, no, I don't know what that is. So anyway, I'm getting ready to sign up and fill my cards in. Those days didn't have all the computer stuff. It was all done with punch cards and things, and very, very manual. This is in the 60s. So I get up to the window where I'm going to pay my money and have my card stamped, and they're going to check and see if those courses are still open. And something takes over. Literally, I was in my body, but I wasn't in control. And it was bizarre. It was kind of freaky. Something took over. And it's talking for me. It's moving for me. It's writing for me. It's paying for me with my money. And, and I found myself taking Linear Algebra 101A. And I didn't know what it was. But I did need some math credits, so what the hell? So I went walking off in there a little bit in a strange state, thinking, what the hell happened there? So I showed up to the class, and there was a very interesting gentleman named Giles, British fellow, covered in chalk and glassy-eyed, mathematician, quite good, brilliant. And he talked pure logic. He'd go up to the board. He had these boards all around the room, and he'd ask you a couple pertinent questions to begin with, and he'd give you a quick scan, and if nobody spoke up, he started. And he would write logic, board after board after board. He'd say it and write it. And as fast as you could keep up, and boy, you got cramps, you know. And that was this linear algebra thing. It was just mathematical logic set theory crap. And, it was nothing really exciting. It wasn't real boring, but then again, it wasn't real exciting either. So I took my course, and I passed it all right, and I said, okay, that's enough of that. I got some credits, and I'll move on. So it's back to filling out cards again, time for the next quarter. You want to guess what happens? Well, that's right. Whatever takes me over again and signs me up for 101B. And I left there going, oh my God, what is going on here? So I went to 101B, did the same thing again, passed it. Okay, one more time, quarter sign-up time. I'm determined this time, no, I am not taking 101C. That's it. Absolutely not. I'm at the window, I'm taking 101C. Luckily, there was no D. So I went and took 101C, and I got my passing and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, what is this really about? Well, fast forward now, I'm getting close to graduation for my BS degree, and I'm really kind of tired of their programs. So I decide to do independent study. So I go off and I write 2 papers on my own, found a professor that would like a couple of my papers. So I did one paper on the quantum mechanics of hyper-C sending information at hyper-C, and how it didn't violate the rules and how you would do it. So I did that, and that was one paper. And the other paper was I derived that equation, the one I had seen. And the reason I was able to derive that equation is because linear algebra. I was able to take what I had learned in linear algebra and take several classic physics experiments plus physics theory and elementary particle decay stuff and show by linear algebra logic they only had one common solution that ended up with this equation that I had solved. So I feel what had happened here is that the guys out there, I'm going to say in this case it's UFO guys, but it doesn't have to be, and we shouldn't maybe even think of it that way. We should maybe think that there's a hierarchy of advancements in the universe. I mean, that's how I see it. We all live in our own delusional reality, right? You see the world your way, I see it my way. We all have our versions. And if I come back and quiz you in 10 years, it'll be probably relatively the same, but I'll make a guess that you'll have some fundamental maybe changes. You see things a little differently. Some dead relative will come back and visited you, and you're no longer an atheist. You know what I mean? You just kind of, okay, I better change that thought pattern. That didn't work out too well. Or you've seen too many UFOs now. Or pick a story. Your reality will change on you over time. Well, in my delusional reality, the way I see it today, we're all spiritual creatures inhabiting physical bodies. I believe in reincarnation, and I believe these guys in the UFOs do too. And furthermore, I believe that there's life of other types of other matter types that coexist with us. And I believe that as you get highly developed, you become conscious of all of this, and you interact, and you work together, and you do things. I haven't got all the answers, to say the least, but I can now reach the point where I can see all of this. These guys in the UFO stuff, craft and stuff, are very concerned about us. They see us in a situation where we can easily blow ourselves to hell. Hopefully they'll intercede and stop the nuclear war. I think they probably will, but what do you bet? Bet your ass? There's evidence on this planet that we had a nuclear war here so many thousands of years ago. And apparently they didn't intercede then. So who knows this time around? I don't know. So anyway, there's all these things going on that I believe are associated with the UFO type phenomenon. And that's where I'm at today. I'll tell you one more bizarre story, and then I guess open it up for questions, answers, comments, and stuff like that. Like I say, I've never been abducted that I can remember consciously, but I have the symptoms and the characteristics of it. One night, some years ago, well, about 10 years ago or so, I had something like a dream. Now, whether it was an astral projection thing, or it was an abduction, or it was just a dream, pick a story. I really don't know, but boy, it was a goodie. I found myself being taken, along with a bunch of other people, to a space station in our solar system. It was located out between the orbits of Saturn and Jupiter, way out there. What it was a sphere about 300 miles in diameter. And the sphere mainly consisted of a single crystal of protein that was being maintained at near absolute zero inside the sphere. And the tour guide, nice little alien guy, was taking us down the corridors and stuff and talking it up and telling us this is what the place does. Except he wasn't speaking, it was telepathic, but you could hear it in your own language. And it wasn't just us humans, it was a mixed group. And we got to see the crystal too. They had a nice little observation deck area, which was very dimly lit, because I don't think they wanted to disturb the crystal much, but they wanted you to be able to say, I saw the crystal. It's like you go to Disney World, I saw the story goes like this. They keep this crystal, a single crystal of this protein, near absolute zero inside the sphere. And the crystal is about this far, that's about 1 foot if you can, from the surface of this 300-mile diameter sphere. And they shine infrared laser beams at very shallow angles, so it just grazes onto the surface of the crystal and scatters back out to the detectors. And they do this over the entire crystal. And all that scattered information is sent back to the computers. And the computers apparently have a program that they can run and stroke all this data, crank, 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 crank. And it can then tell who wants to know what's going on where inside the solar system, down to a very, very small scale. What I'm trying to tell you is the nicest way as I can is you're under total surveillance. Okay? There's nothing you do they don't see. Something the NSA would just love to have. Oh my God, we don't get our hands on that. We'd find every terrorist in the universe. Anyway, so that was the dream essentially. They took us out there, they gave us the tour, and informed us that we were under total surveillance and took us home. Okay, that's about all I want to say. I guess I'll open it up to questions and answers. How are we going to do that with the microphones?
Just repeat the question.
Oh, okay. Does anybody want to make a comment, ask a question, do anything? Speak up. Yes?
Just to ask it, during any of your altered kind of reality situations where things weren't the same, were any mind-altering drugs?
Man, I got some really good shit. No. But thanks for asking. You had to ask. I know you had to ask. Yeah. Yes.
Have
Have you ever been out to the extraterrestrial highway out of Vegas?
Oh, no, I didn't know they had an extraterrestrial highway out of Vegas.
Right, Area 51.
Oh, Area 51. I've been by there. Yeah, okay. I've been by, but not. I haven't. I know people that used to go out there to quote Freedom Ridge and used to watch the military fly their flying saucers, but that's about it. Yes.
What conclusions have you reached about the power source of UFOs if you studied physics?
Yeah. Most of them, I think, are, most of them free energy, we'll say, but not all. It depends on the craft and on the level of technology of the civilization that's visiting us. And my impression is that there's a full spectrum of some that are only a few tens of thousands of years ahead of us, let's say technology-wise, and those that are a few billion years ahead of us. And as you well imagine, there's a complete spectrum of technology and spirituality involved there. And there comes a point where I think, for instance, there's a book out called The Andreasen Affair, about Betty Anderson and her abduction, written by, I think, Raymond Fowler. And in there, that book, there's drawings of the propulsion system on the craft. And if you look at that, it's totally, by regular standard physics, it's a totally irrational, bizarre. Because what does she show? She shows crystals coming up at weird angles and whatnot. She shows fluid tubes and bizarre stuff. I mean, nothing that any engineer would think what a warp engine is, you know. But these are guys that come from the ring galaxy that surrounds the Milky Way. You know, Milky Way is contained inside of a ring galaxy made up of stars that are about 4 billion years older than the average star in the Milky Way galaxy. And the civilizations there are much older than here. Now these guys travel out from the ring galaxy into our galaxy, visit, do things, and go back home all in one evening. So on Star Trek parlance, they're doing like Warp 84 with these weird-looking engines that use crystals and fluids. In other words, it's a type of physics and technology that's just like a psychic as opposed to regular physics. Now, I've had dabblings in some of these bizarre types of fields and stuff that are not regular physics fields. I know their reality, I don't understand them, but they're real. I'll give you an experience that happened one night. My mother was down visiting me some many years ago, and I lived up in L.A. in a hill. And my house was a mess and whatnot, except my bedroom was halfway decent, so I said, Mom, take the bedroom, and I would go sleep in my van. Well, that particular night, I was really hot on working on the idea of warp drive. So I stayed up all night trying to figure out how to get through the light barrier. Well, I didn't know it, but my mother was up all night having an experience with my mother's a bit psychic, and she was having an experience with an alien that was not of regular flesh and not from our part of the universe, but way out there. And so all night long, she was receiving images and messages from her, and she was drawing. So around 6 a.m., I was hungry, and I went down to have some breakfast, and I figured I'd be kind of quiet, wouldn't wake her up. And she was already up, so we got to yakking. And I said, well, I've been up all night working on this. And she says, I've been up all night working on this. So it turns out that she had been contacted by a feminine alien creature that had wanted her, my mother, to convey to me how to build an engine to be able to go out and see her, and had my mother draw the essential components. And my mother's a fair artist, and she did. And she also had my mother draw a picture of what she looked like. It was kind of bizarre. Anyway, that was an interesting story. I'm looking at this drawing my mother made, and I said, what is this? It took me about 2.5 months before I figured out what I was looking at. What she had done is given my mother the plans for a tachyon engine, something you need to go through the light barrier and beyond. And I figured out, I reasoned out, how it would work. So that's a whole new energy supply, something we're not even going to deal with in our time for the longest time. Now, free energy devices are there; they're real. 1989, I went out to Silmar, out in the valley. I went to John Bedini Amplifiers, his lab, and visited with John Bedini, who had his free energy motor up and running. He gave me carte blanche to go look at it and put the oscilloscope and the meters and check all the wiring and do everything and put the thing under load. And he was running this free energy device motor on a 7.4 volt NiCad transistor radio battery, and he was running 1/20th of a horsepower off it. And he did it for an hour and a half while I was there. You can't do that. It violates all the regular rules if you believe how regular rules are supposed to work. What he had done in his circuitry, he had found a way to convert that battery into a 0-point quantum rectifier. So he was bringing the energy out of the vacuum field. You know, which is, there's more there than we can ever use, and besides, when we use it, it goes back to the vacuum field. It goes on and on. Now, I said to John, my God, you've done it, this is scale-upable, you can make an electric car with it, you can run a house with it. And he said, oh, yeah. And he pulled out the plans for his electric Camaro. He wanted a Camaro that was electric with Camaro performance. This is back in '89. So it was a motor about 18 inches long, 9 inches in diameter, using samarium cobalt magnets and a special armature design of his, and with flanges and whatnot. So it was designed to directly bolt into the transmission. And I said, wow, are you going to build this? And he says, I'm not. Well, I said, why not? He said, I had a visit from the energy department, U.S. government energy department. He said, yeah, and they told me that I was not to put in for a patent, I was not to build the Camaro, and I was to stop talking about it, or basically they're going to kill me. And he said they were very sincere. And so John decided not to do it. And so I saw that. And then I went up and visited Bruce De Palma, who's passed on now. He has a thing called InDrive. Now, InDrive, as he had it, was not efficient at all, but it demonstrated the doability. With some simple modifications, InDrive can be made exceedingly efficient and far more powerful than John Bedini's. But he's not going to go anywhere, because of course he's dead, and no one else, as far as I know, is really working on it. But this was actually built on an anomaly discovered by Michael Faraday in 1840, an experiment he did on a monopolar unifill something generator. He came up with this really anomalous result, which no one has ever properly explained. He found a way into the background field, a fluke. All great discoveries are made by accident, you know what I mean? Let's see, there's Stanley Meyer. He discovered that water has this weird resonance phenomenon. I think somewhere around 42,000 cycles, somewhere in there, and maybe also at 38,000. That if you can vibrate water at just that right frequency and then apply electrical current, like you would for electrolysis to break the water apart into hydrogen and oxygen, that you don't have to pay as much electrical power as you normally do. Only 1/17 what you normally have to. What does that mean? That means you got all kinds of hydrogen and oxygen to run your motor, that you take an alternator off to make more hydrogen and oxygen while you drive down the highway. And the waste product's water, which you use again to make, Now, Stanley perfected this. He got a patent on it, actually. It's one of the worst patents I've ever read. Horrid. But nonetheless, it's all in there if you can just stand to go through it. That's another story. But they killed Stanley. They offered him $1.5 billion to walk away from it. He said no. They poisoned him at lunch. Now, there's other devices. Other guys have done it. And other guys have accepted the payoff and have walked away and now live in nice palatial estates. Free energy is out there. It's very doable. Even the standard physics community now is breaking down and realizing, there's things that just, there's free energy. But they're not going to come out and tell you this. And the people that run our planet, that run our world, they don't want you to have that. My God, you'd be dangerous. Think about this. You don't have to pay your gas bill anymore, your heating bill, your car runs fine, all the manufacturing costs, like a quarter to a third and a half of businesses in the country are actually, if you chase it down, it's actually energy costs. It's really petroleum costs, or coal costs, or natural gas costs. Well, that money goes to the selected right people, and it's all financed by the right banks and right financiers. I mean, this is their cash cow. They don't want you free from that. You might get loose. You might even go for democracy or something. You might believe that your elections are free. You might believe those voting machines. Who knows? Something terrible could happen. You know? I think that I covered your energy question, yeah. Well, saucer guys, they got it all down. They understand this and they've moved on. Okay.
Yeah, you emphasized the importance of logic when you were taking the linear algebra courses.
Yeah.
In your opinion, does logic transcend civilizations and different times? In other words, do you think that the logic will be the same independent of time and civilization?
Pretty much so, yeah. I think a way I'd phrase it is truth. You know, and so if you can come to a truth by logic, then that stands the test of time, yeah. Unless you change the fundamental rules of the universe somehow. I'm God and I'm changing the rules, you know.
Are you familiar with the stranger at the Pentagon story?
I've heard of it once, but not really in any depth at all.
I see.
Yeah.
Because it's right in line with what you're talking about as far as, a visitor from, another planet comes here, offers to give us, all these great plans on how to heal our planet, and free energy and what have you.
Did he make it out alive?
Well, he was apparently an alien. So
Uh-huh. He could do it. He could deliver.
He could come and go at will.
Uh-huh.
But I just thought, I don't
No, I know really nothing about that. I've heard the title of that, a book, a thing. I remember seeing a blurb on it once, but that's about it.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
You couldn't hear the question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. He asked about the stranger at the Pentagon story, and that's what we're talking about. Sorry.
Have you given any thought to consciousness and how that affects some of this stuff that you're seeing?
Not really too much, but I know they're in contact all the time. It wants to know how consciousness affects all this stuff. Well, in my belief system, I believe that we're here, but we're not really here. For instance, I think all of us, even though we all look at ourselves and we say we're here and we know we're here and we believe in matter and all that good stuff, the higher truth is we're also someplace else, all of us. I'm in cubicle number 74925784444 in the galactic central times, pick a story. I believe that we're all located really someplace else and that we're projections in here. Well, pick an imagery. I mean, that's what I believe. But, you can believe what you want. It's still a free country. The martial law has not been declared yet. Yes?
Just wondering about your mother, and has she played other parts of, giving you certain kinds of information besides the example you told us about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was, my mother, most of you could hear that, I hope. If you want to know what my mother has input on UFO stuff or input on just general. Like I said, my mother is fairly psychic. And so all during my life, I've witnessed her perceiving things that you can't normally perceive. So that naturally broadened my my perspective on things. I don't know if that really answers what you're asking.
Well, I mean, were there a number of times when she facilitated in some way specific information coming to you?
I don't think so, no. But you never know. I really don't know. Nothing that I can think of that matches that question. Oh, way back there.
Yeah. One, did your mother have any experiences also when she was young, or that you know of? Or how about your grandmother, your grandfather also?
Oh, I see where you're going. I don't think she knows of any particularly. I believe she's been abducted. I know my sister has been abducted. I believe I've been abducted. But I have no conscious memory of it. My sister has some memories of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but we don't really talk about it too much. It's kind of understood in the family.
I wanted to ask you, what's your nationality? I mean, what's your nationality from Europe?
You want to see my papers? Are you from ICE? I am of Scottish descent. Yeah. It used to be Macquaid.
That has something to do with it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They drove us out of Scotland. Yes, yes. Yep.
Have you used your technical knowledge from the ETs to build anything?
I would say in a way, yes. It's hard to say what is the technical knowledge. I mean, it's like been a hobby with me to go off and understand what they're doing. And of course, when you learn the mathematics and physics to try to solve the problem, you get spin off and turn out from it. So in that sense, I would say, yeah. I spend most of my time these days working in ultrasonics, pulse magnetics, and microwave stuff, and also inert gas emissions and some other esoteric stuff. And yeah, it's somewhat related to some of the stuff, but
It seems like most of the knowledge they give you is to build a kind of engine or propulsion device.
I don't know. I have a different take on it myself. They want me, I believe, to convey these things that I understand about them. So, get out there and talk and, how do they call it? Beat the woods or shake the. There's a phrase. You see how to put this.
Rattle the cage.
Yeah, rattle a cage. I'll be kind as I can, but let's face it, we're sheeple, aren't we? We're a society, but we're sheeple. We're a herd creature. Now, people don't like to hear that, but that's what also gives us our strength. We're a herd creature. Now, we're a much more advanced, complex herd creature, but we're still a herd creature. Let me give you a metaphor. A simple herd creature would be like a sheep. And a sheep organizes itself basically around where it's going to eat. Going to go eat, move as a herd. And it's got sheepdogs that keep the herd together and move it through the pastures, and they feed on the stuff. And the sheepdogs are told what to do by the sheep herder, that guy. And the dogs are smart. They know what they're up to, and they know how to keep the sheep in line, and the sheep know the dogs will bite them or something. So they follow orders and they graze. That's the life of a sheep. Okay, now we're more complex herd animals. We don't graze on grass. We graze on concepts, beliefs, and ideas. But we have our sheepdogs. We have our opinion farmers, our authority figures. We have our laws, rules. You better, or we're going to, we will. We'll put you in jail. That's that sheepdog biting at you. You follow? That's us. So we're all being herded through our lives, and we're feeding on different ideas. And if somebody gets a little bit far out of the herd, they send someone to get him back in the herd or to send him to the dinner table. I was a kid, and I was in kindergarten. I had to go with my cousin Jack one summer over to a place he was working because it was Jack's turn to watch me. So Jack marched me up the local hill and set me down on a hillside, and he was down way below in a barn. He was cleaning it out for Shep, the sheep rancher, that next ranch over. And he told me, you stay here, and I come out of the barn, I better see your butt here or you're in trouble, boy. And he meant it, and I knew it. So I sat there and I just watched the day go by watching the sheep herds. And there was a herd was brought in by Shep's son. He was on a horse, and he had the herd out in front of him. But he was way back there, like you could hardly see he's even with them. And the sheepdogs knew what they were doing. They were moving the herd from something pastures out to the other pastures. Now I watched the herd come by. And every so often, one of the young rams would jump out of the herd and go, I'm going to, break loose and go do. And a sheepdog would run out and go right after him, nip on his ass and get him all the way back into the herd again. But that kept happening over and over again with different young rams. But the herd itself kept going. Now, if they had a ram that was always causing trouble and whatnot, you know what happened to that ram? He became dinner. Now, the guy that was running the whole show, you didn't even see until later on. The herd's now over there, and he's coming up on the horse. And his horse knows the deal, too. His horse is going plop, plop. No rush at all, because he's not going to catch up to the herd. It's not the idea. He's supposed to follow at a distance. And that's how our society is in this metaphor. The guys that run us, you don't even see them. You don't even know they exist. The ones you know about are the sheepdogs, the front men, the authority figures. And so you ask about UFO disclosure and whatnot, go ask the sheepdog about it. He'll tell you the party line. Like I say, look, don't listen to the government. What have we learned so far about the government? They're pathological liars. Okay. Another question.
Kind of along the lines of what she was getting at, do you have any, or do you believe, or is there good evidence that the powers that be have a way of monitoring people who are doing, or who are finding ways to get free energy?
Oh, yes, totally. Oh, yeah. Folks, I used to work at Hughes Aircraft. And a funny thing happened on the way to work, or I'll say one day. Anyway, I was at work one day in the microelectronics lab. And we had this charge number assigned, given to us for a project. And we had this shoebox full of large-scale integrated circuit chips. And looked at these things and went, my God, we'd never seen anything like it. These are big chips. And they weren't made of silicon. They were made of gallium arsenide, which is 10 times faster than silicon. And under the microscope, it had the highest transistor density we'd ever seen. It was like a fourth of a Cray computer on a single chip. And those days, Cray computer was the computer, the big number cruncher computer. So we got real curious, and what is this all about? So we asked the guy that brought the chips and stuff to ask another guy who was going back to Hughes Malibu Research Facility where these chips had been made. What are these? And so about a week or so later, we got the answer back. Oh, this is for the NSA. This is their new prototype chip for their new computers for NSA. And they wanted us to take 10 chips, wire all the chips up in their packages, and they take the 10 chips and put them under the command of one chip, and that was the new modular supercomputer to be installed back at NSA. So now I saw these chips in 1985. You still can't see these chips out today. The public, you don't get to see this stuff. Now, in 1991, they started implementing these computers at NSA at Fort Meade. Now, at Fort Meade, you got like 27 acres underground. Supercomputers, 27 acres. There's a lot of living quarters and other stuff down there too, but nonetheless, it's a big facility devoted to number crunching data for watching the world, watching the United States. Every phone call in the United States is monitored by the computers of the NSA. They keyword and key phrase every conversation, identify who's in the conversation, and it's stored in memory. Computers process it and flag anybody who's using too many keywords for human eyeballs to look at to see if there should be any follow-up on what's going on in that conversation. And there's a rather large list of specific people they always watch and listen to very consciously. The shakers and movers are totally watched. Now, if they get clue or a hint that you're getting involved in free energy or other things, they're on you. They're just watching you. And you do something that they really don't like, they decide what they're going to do with you. I think he's a good candidate for the IRS. Yeah, me too. I think we ought to maybe do something with something. Yeah, he's going to have a medical problem. Yes. Pick a story. They can do what they want to you. What are you going to do? You've been watching what's going down in the country. Do you really believe the stories you're being told that the government tells you is going on? Huh? Can you trust these people? What was the former head of Homeland Security? Was it Cherkov? What is it? Yeah, in Russian, doesn't that mean son of the devil? Now I ask you, is God trying to tell you something or not? The head of Homeland Security, the son of the devil. I just think it's hilarious when you think about it. This is the guy that when he quits the job, what does he do? He sees to it that the new, scanning company that he's working for is the one used by TSA across the country. He just so happens to make a few $1 million. Come on, everybody's got to make a living. That's the corruption level we got going on here. This is the integrity level. This is bad. Bad. We got a Justice Department that doesn't want to look into 1,500 machine guns given to the Mexican drug cartel. When you got, something's going on here. Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember something you said earlier. Were you a first-hand witness to the craft that landed at Reserve Force Base?
No. That was told to me by a man that was a colonel from the British Air Force that was the liaison officer between the American and British Air Force. Yeah. It's all secondhand. I can't swear to it. It's a great story. Is it true? I believe it is, but is it? Don't know. Let's see, out this way. Anybody? Not you? You're coughing? No question? Okay. Okay, yeah.
You mentioned Lemurians in one of your answers.
Yeah.
Is there a particular group that you feel you encountered more frequently than others? Or had some kind of contact with?
No, not really. I don't really identify them as groups I know. No, I don't know what groups are contacting me. I feel them. Like, for instance, I'll hear this high-speed sound in my head at the top of my hearing. It'll last for like 15 seconds to maybe a minute and a half or so. And I believe what that is a communication to me, a download of some idea or something that, quote, they want me to look into or think about. But that's all I can say about it. It's been happening for many a year. What group would be sending it, I don't know. At times I feel I'm under surveillance. I can feel them. You ever get the feeling you're being watched? You know? I know they're watching me. I'm not paranoid. I just know they're watching me. But that's all I can say. I don't know who specifically they would be.
How did you know they were Lemurians?
That was just like intuitive knowledge.
As in Lemuria, the
Yeah.
continent?
Yeah, well, apparently they were a high civilization on all the entire planet about 10 million years ago. You can find their ruins at different locations if you know what you're looking at. Some of these weird, let's see, a friend of mine was a spelunker, cave explorer. And back in the, when was it? Back around 1970, early 70s, his team went down into Mexico, into this mountain valley thing. And there was in the center of this valley was a 50-foot diameter circular hole that went down 1,500 feet straight. It was a real weird geology thing. Why would nature build a 1,500-foot circular 50-foot diameter hole? When you got down to the bottom, it made a right angle turn and headed off. So they went down this hole, went down the tunnels, went down, and they ended up in a giant underground domed cavern. And it was just full of these giant boulders, things the size of houses, and they couldn't really get through very well. But they took a picture on their way out with high-speed color film. They got back, they developed the picture. What the picture showed was inside of this giant dome that their lights died out before it could hit the far side, there was tunnels all around. It was a hub for a high-speed underground transport system, and what they'd come down was a ventilation shaft. And the place was 10 million years old. Now you can find a piece of that same system, but further on in South America, in the Andes, on the backside of the Andes, there's a rectangular cut in the mountains. It goes 110 miles with a side channel. And it ends where the mountains fold over because of the subduction between the plates. Bend over, that's where the tunnel collapses. And it's been there 10 million years. This is part of the high-speed underground transport system that was all over the planet. But these guys haven't been maintaining it for quite some time.
How did they date it? How did they date it to be 10 million years?
You do it by just giving your guesstimation about where the tunnel's at, what's happening to the rock, and how long it took for that rock to Yeah, the geology guys have a rough estimate, pretty good. Back there.
My question is, have you ever had your home or your phone tapped as a result of some of the studies that you've done?
Well, it doesn't have to be tapped at your home. I mean,
Had your phone tapped?
well, everybody's phone is tapped, is what I tried to tell you. Look, here's how it's done. You have a thing called a latch circuit on your phone circuit. Now, this changed since, I'm talking about hard lines at your house, not the cell phone, the hard lines. Back at the switching station, you have a thing called a latch circuit. If they open the latch circuit on your line, that converts your earpiece and your phone on your phone into a dynamic microphone, and they can hear your conversation in your home, a normal voice level conversation at 30 feet from the phone. So they can tap into you anytime they want to. And they can run that through a voice decoder, which translates and keyword indexes and phrase indexes the conversation. That is called up by ATT Chicago computers, downloaded to them. They download it to Fort Meade for processing. And if it needs further looking onto, transferred out to Maryland to the NSA buildings out there near the Capitol. Yeah, over here.
My contention is that all of these mass killings and explosions and all of this, these are
Psyops.
programmed.
Yeah. Lady is saying that she's thinking a lot of these mass murder killing things and whatnot are basically government operations, and I think you're half the time probably right. It's really kind of hard to tell for sure because they also take advantage of ones that are legitimate. Legitimate in the sense that the SRIs, the serotonin reuptake inhibitor drugs, which if you mix them particularly with alcohol, has a tendency to make you suicidal and or homicidal. And this is well known, but the drug companies don't want you thinking about it or talking about it. And they got people all over this country on these drugs. So statistically, you're going to have a certain number, they're going to blow, they're just going to blow it.
Aren't the drug companies part of the operation?
Yeah, I'd say the higher-ups, yeah. You should also look at it. We used to have a thing called Operation Paperclip after World War II, where we brought over a bunch of the Nazis and whatnot. And then we morphed into Project MT Ultra, and then it had sub-projects under it. One of them was called Project Monarch. Now, under Project Monarch, they developed all kinds of people that had multiple personalities based on Joseph Mengele's work at the death camps, where he had learned how to take small children and torture them and terrorize them so that their personalities would fracture. And so he had multiple personalities to work with, and then he'd train each personality to do a certain thing and be a certain type of personality, individual, that he could call up on command and or suppress. This guy was about as sinister as you get. Now this guy survived the war, got to South America under another name, and then was periodically brought back into the United States to teach our guys how to do this. And we developed a whole bunch of Project Monarch assassins and everything else that they wanted under this project. So every time I hear about a mass killing, I always have to ask myself, is this a Monarch project or not? I don't know, but it's one of those things I can't rule out anymore. I mean, they're not telling us exactly the heinous things they're doing. But who here believes that Lee Harvey Oswald killed the president? Okay, that's one down. Who believes that James Earl Ray killed Martin Luther King? Who here believes that Sirhan Sirhan killed Robert Kennedy? You got my point. Okay, I mean, who knows? I mean, we don't have a press we can trust anymore. It's all ran by 5 major corporations. We can't trust our voting machines anymore. I mean, they got, it's trust me, the computer says, and the computer says, oh, who's our proof? Oh, that must be right, it's a computer. We don't, the system has been bought and sold out. I mean, what in the hell is Soros owning a company out of Spain that's counting our votes for? I mean, do you trust Mr. Soros to be the wonderful whatever for us? Back there.
What are some of your conclusions about the ET agenda vis-a-vis us generally?
Yeah, I think the ETs are exceedingly worried about us. They really want us to succeed, but they're under something like a self-imposed prime directive, like you had on Star Trek. So they do everything they can within a certain delta, within their rules. And so they've inserted themselves throughout the world's populations, through people like myself and probably several people in this room, and are doing input into them. And each of these people, including myself, we go do something. And it's like, imagine you're in a very large crowd. And imagine you can get 10% of the crowd to decide to walk east at the same time. That starts moving the crowd east, So I think that's what's happening here. They're putting these different inputs into society in a coherent fashion. And different alien groups have better talents at doing certain things than others because they can interface with us better, understand us better, have better skills, better technology for certain jobs. And that's what's going on. That's what I think's going on. I can't prove any of this to you. Okay. Yes?
That guy you said he went up to talk to you and he said the insect ET showed half her face.
Well, she brought her image down just about to her mouth, he said, and didn't drop it any further. He thought she didn't do that because he thought that he couldn't. He thought that she thought he couldn't handle it.
What was the? Did you follow up and see what information was given to him, or why he came up to you later, like 1 year later?
Well, it was just an accident, a chance. From our perspective, it was a chance coincidence meeting in town. Now, were there any guiding forces suddenly, gently pushing us together? Quite possibly so, but I have no, that's just maybe fanciful thinking on my part. Yes.
What do you think about the hollow earth and how this figures the whole thing?
Oh, I don't believe in the hollow earth stuff and whatnot because you can't support the upper mantle with the type of weight and load you'd have by any material, rock material we would know of. Plus, we know from seismic study and wave theory and whatnot that there is a fluid medium between the crust until you reach a solid core again for a couple 3,000 miles down. So I put no stock in the hollow earth theory now, but a lot of people I think misinterpret. They think just because some people are living down in massive cave systems that are 10, 20, 30 miles down, they're thinking it's hollow earth. No, it's just a place in the crust that's hollow. That I believe in. Yeah, there's a lot of underground facilities on this planet, alien and otherwise. Yeah, but not hollow earth in the sense of truly a hollow earth. Out this way anymore. Up. Yes, you.
Do you know anything about the Montauk Project?
Very little about the Montauk. I am very suspicious of it from what I've heard about it, but then again, so what?
I've been inside the air base.
Uh-huh.
Catacombs that go for miles underneath the ground.
Yeah.
And apparently they supposedly transported a full ship.
Yeah. Well, as they say, something happened there, but whose story are you going to believe? It's just one of those things for me. Yeah. Yeah, over there.
How would you say crop circles relate to UFOs?
Well, it appears that a lot of the crop circles are definitely done by UFOs because they've shown up in the photography of it. They've caught them in the act. Small UFO-type craft-looking things, laying them down real quick. So I'd say yes. Is that all of them? I don't think so. Probably some other stuff going on too, but I don't know.
Another question. Given the advancement of the ETs, how would you rate the effectiveness of SETI and their big things that they're trying to contact extraterrestrials? Does that seem reasonable?
No, totally foolish. Why? Because from my point of view, we had disclosure in '52 when they came into Washington D.C. and stayed there for 2 days over the Capitol building, and then flew away and came back the next weekend and did it 2 days again. And we refused to really acknowledge it and maintain a memory that it even happened. If they can get here, you don't need to have a communication at the speed of light, since they're obviously coming by some facility that's vastly beyond the speed of light. So to me, it's just foolishness. I mean, those people, it does have one redeeming feature, because we are a spectrum. There are a lot of people this is really tough for. I mean, they have a really hard time psychologically with aliens. They're not ready for it. They don't want to deal with it. They want to keep it. Let's don't talk about that. It interferes with my religious beliefs. It scares the shit out of me. Let's don't talk about that. For those people, it's a good thing, because that gets them thinking about the possibility, engaging their mind. For them, I think it's okay. But for the rest of us that are paying really attention and not locked into rigid fundamentalist beliefs, that they're really, it's a no use. Again.
Is your information available on the internet or in a book or something?
Yeah, I have a UFO lecture that's more technical on YouTube. Just put in my name and UFO lecture Gary Wade, and you can see it's in 5 parts, about 10-minute segments, so you might enjoy that. I've been told it's time to go. Okay? Hey, enjoyed it.
Just like to thank Gary for being here tonight. I have a couple quick things for you. First is that Joyce is looking for a ride to Vegas for the symposium. So if anyone wants to carpool, I have a young lady here who'd like to team up with you, come up and see me afterwards. Don't forget that if you sign up before our next meeting, you're going to get a $50 discount on your ticket to Vegas. And also come back next month on the 19th and we'll see Mike Barra. Thanks for coming tonight. See you all next week. Thanks, Gary.
I'm going to be immortalized here.
Okay, just Tim, or you want me to?
Oh, your hand, so you can see it.
Yeah.